Hi, this is Jeff with Invocabo, and this is a short presentation sharing with you the results of our polling in Russia. So, what we did is we sent emails to some of our business contacts throughout Russia over the last 2 weeks. We had a total of 43 people respond. Not a huge number, but certainly indicative of what the sentiment would be among small business owners and other leaders in the business community. 74% of those responses were men, 87% were married. Religious breakdown, 43% are Orthodox. Almost half of all the respondents said they practice no faith. Now, we had a great distribution geographically. 39% of all of our respondents lived in Moscow. That's what you would expect because of the nature of our audience is business people. 11% in St. Petersburg. But we did have responses from every single regional district in Russia. We asked about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, there were some in the United States who were saying that, the Putin government had strangled the news and people weren't even aware that this was happening. And, mothers were losing their sons and didn't even know that there was a war. Our evidence doesn't support that. You can see 95% of people were aware of it. We also asked about support for the invasion, and it's pretty overwhelming, 70% being opposed. Just a very small number, 13%, supporting it. We also asked about the knowledge of the rather substantial number of soldiers who have likely died in Ukraine in the last month. Now, it could easily be twice that, but 5,000 certainly is a number that was kind of a conservative number. Here, again, almost 60% of people were aware of fatalities of that kind. However, 35% of people either not being aware of that or maybe they didn't believe it and they chose no. That's a pretty significant number to be unaware of that level of fatalities in just the course of a month. We asked about provocation. Now, many in the Western press, including here in the United States, have said that basically the United States has provoked Russia into this attack. In fact, many people who I think are well-intentioned hold that opinion. So I wanted to ask Russians whether or not they believe that. This is kind of interesting. Although a majority said no, 46% said yes. That's a pretty significant percentage of the population believing that they were provoked. I also asked about sympathies, whether or not they believe that the Ukrainians really did want to be a part of Russia, right? You've got those districts in the eastern part of Ukraine where there's supposed to be a lot of Russian sympathy. They really wanted to be Russians. They don't want to be part of Ukraine. Well, certainly the Russians don't believe that that's the case, right? Just a tiny percentage of people believe that story about Russia, less than 10%. The overwhelming majority believe that that's not the case. I asked about NATO, whether or not NATO was threatening Russia. Look at this. That is a significant response. 42% saying yes. No clear majority here, but certainly people in Russia think that there's been some provocation and that NATO is a threat to them. I asked about the United States in particular. This is an interesting response. So we finally did get a majority response on this kind of perspective. Fully 10% fewer people, only a third of people believe that the United States is threatening Russia. Now, it's nice to see that there's a distinction between NATO and Russia because there have been some different actions by NATO there that might be perceived as bellicose. On the other hand, it is a little bit scary to think that a third of Russians think that the United States is threatening them. Whether that's true or not, it should be something that we should be concerned with. I asked then people whether or not the United States was an enemy of Russia. Now, this could certainly be taken in a couple of ways, right? Some people, they could be answering the question themselves. I believe the United States is an enemy of Russia. Other people might have interpreted the questions, does the United States see Russia as an enemy? Regardless, an even smaller number, only 1 in 5 answered in the affirmative here. So that's a little bit reassuring. I asked whether or not the respondents had been impacted by sanctions from the United States. And as you are probably aware, sanctions against Russia are unprecedented in modern history for a major world power. And not surprisingly, almost 80% of people had been impacted by those sanctions. You would be surprised if they had not. I asked about attitudes towards China, whether or not Russia should develop closer ties with China. I think this is a no-brainer. 47% said yes. Clearly, they believe that, given what's happening to them, that they need to have a partnership with China. It's interesting. It would be great to talk to those 31% who said no. It would be curious to see what they would like to see happen in terms of Russia's standing with the rest of the world. Now, we've heard reports that lots of Russians want to leave the country because they're so unhappy with things. Well, surprisingly, 45% said yes. That's an extraordinary number. Imagine if 45% of the people in the United States or in England wanted to leave their country, right? That's not a good sign in terms of domestic tranquility. This is probably the most significant question of the survey in terms of the importance of it for what's happening internally. Now, you may have heard that a member of parliament in Russia had demanded that Alaska be returned as a form of reparations for the sanctions. Fortunately, it seems that not a single Russian thinks that that is an appropriate idea. I also asked about the job approval of Vladimir Putin. I was shocked to see that 50% gave him a poor number. That's a really bad result. In the United States, if you saw a response like that, it would mean that that incumbent was toast. Only 10% said excellent. Only 15% said good. So a positive number, effectively, to translate that to something you might be accustomed to. Approval numbers, that would be about a 26% approval. Again, anybody with low numbers like that in the United States as an incumbent would lose by a wide margin. One additional observation here, 13% of all the respondents said that they preferred not to answer. You don't find that in the United States. You would find 97%, 98, 99% are going to give an opinion. So these people are obviously, there's some level of fear or concern there about exposing themselves. This presentation is a result of some polling done by Invocabo. We use data to evaluate audiences for advertising campaigns and to advise our clients. We then analyze that data both with artificial intelligence, big data, as well as human wisdom, people of great experience and insight to interpret what that data means. And then we use that information to build predictive models for our clients, whether they're in politics or in business or even for the church. Thank you for taking time to watch this survey. I hope you have a great day.